Hello, and welcome to A Perspective on Crime, a podcast that explores contemporary research in criminology. One of the greatest TV programmes ever made is 24 Hours in Police Custody. If you've seen it, you'll agree. And if you haven't, then do, because you're really missing a treat. Unlike shows like Cops on the Street or Cops in Cars or Car Cops on the Street Banging Up Wrong 'Uns or whatever they're called, 24 Hours in Police Custody is a considered and intelligent exploration of a police investigation from the second the crime is reported through to sentencing. It's enlightening, insightful, and beyond all, a testament to the skill and determination of police officers when faced with some of the worst crimes imaginable. One episode stands out above all, both for its narrative and its honesty. A man is being blackmailed. He's visited a sex worker and an anonymous individual informs him that unless he pays £1,000, his family and friends will be informed of his dangerous liaison. The shattering twist, though, comes with the discovery that the blackmailer is a serving police officer. A serving police officer that was one of the team tasked with staking out the site of the cash drop-off. His fellow officers, their quiet anger, their sense of betrayal, their commitment to see him face the full force of the law is both inspiring and affirming. For a programme which trumpets the triumphs of the police, it doesn't shy away from confronting the fact that not all police officers are on the side of the angels. It's just those officers that the work we're exploring today looks at. But not the sort of one we imagine, the ones that rack up a raft of complaints, minor infringement, frequent flyers when it comes to questions of performance, competence and commitment. The paper is titled Fire Without Smoke, Understanding Spontaneous Career-Ending Police Misconduct. It's ordered by Timothy I.C. Cubitt, Morven Brown and Matthew Bland, and is published in the journal Police Quarterly. It provides a nuanced look at the different pathways that can lead to serious misconduct, challenging some of our most basic assumptions. The researchers started by asking a simple question that challenges a core assumption in policing. Does a lot of smoke, in the form of unproven complaints, really mean there's a fire waiting to start? The idea is that officers who commit the kind of serious, career-ending misconduct that shatters public confidence usually leave a long trail of warning signs, a history of complaints, big and small, that should have flagged them up as a risk long before disaster strikes. The idea that career-ending misconduct doesn't come out of a clear blue sky is a comforting thought for police chiefs and the public alike. It suggests a system of checks and balances that, if we just pay attention to the little things, works. But the study asks a deeply uncomfortable question. What if the most dangerous fires start without any smoke at all? What about the officers who commit serious misconduct with no discernible warning signs? The incidents that seem to come out of nowhere, leaving departments and the public asking, how did we not see that coming? This is the counterintuitive puzzle at the heart of today's episode. The study ingeniously, or intuitively, depending on your perspective, doesn't treat all officers who commit misconduct as a single, uniform group. Aggregating all officers together, it says, hides important trends and masks the fact that there might be multiple, distinct pathways to the same outcome. It carefully separates officers into different groups to see if the warning signs, or lack of, are different for each. So how did they figure this out? Firstly, researchers obtained anonymised administrative data from a large police force here in the UK. They used match pair design for their work, Put simply, for every single officer who had been or was about to be dismissed for serious misconduct, the researchers found a comparison officer. This comparison officer was selected from the same graduating class, was the same gender, and was a similar age, but critically had a clean service record. This method allowed for a direct, almost side-by-side comparison to isolate the factors that truly distinguish the two groups. In total, the sample included 336 officers. The first question researchers tackled was the old "where there's smoke there's fire" adage. They looked at whether a large number of unsubstantiated complaints from the public that couldn't be proven one way or the other, was linked to career-ending misconduct. The core finding was clear and, to me at least, surprising. There was no statistically significant link. Having a lot of smoke, in the form of unsubstantiated complaints, did not actually predict the fire of a career-ending event. So, what did a high number of unproven complaints correlate with? The data showed that they were linked to more minor issues, like complaints about rudeness or incidents that occurred during an arrest, and, unsurprisingly, to higher overall numbers of complaints in general. But they weren't a reliable warning sign for the most serious type of misconduct. The idea, therefore, that a high volume of unproven complaints being a clear red flag didn't hold up. That forced researchers to dig deeper. They essentially said, okay, let's accept that this group gets a lot of complaints. If the sheer volume isn't the signal, is there something else hidden in the profile that is? Here, some important predictors emerged. Officers in community or response policing roles and those who were transferred frequently between posts showed a higher risk. One factor stood out, though, as the single most powerful predictor: secondary employment, having a second job outside of policing. The finding was dramatic. As the authors state, officers in the high complaint group who also held a second job were found to be around 15 times more likely to commit career-ending misconduct than their counterparts. This is a massive effect and points to a crucial and perhaps overlooked risk factor. The researchers then turned their attention to the most puzzling group of all: officers who commit what they term spontaneous misconduct. These are the individuals with almost no prior complaint history, substantiated or not. This is the group that most profoundly challenges the smoke without fire assumption we started with. They are, by definition, the officers most likely to be missed by traditional early warning systems. When the researchers analysed this group, they found something remarkable. All of the traditional predictors vanished. Age, gender, rank, duty type, and even secondary employment showed no significant relationship with misconduct. It was as if this group were operating by a completely different set of rules. There was only one statistically significant finding, and it was deeply counterintuitive. The analysis found an inverse relationship with the legitimate use of force. In simple terms, this means that officers who reported fewer uses of legitimate force were more associated with this type of spontaneous misconduct. The authors are rightly cautious about this finding. They suggest it could be a reflection of reported honesty or dishonesty. It could be that these officers are assigned to lower risk duties with fewer opportunities to use force. Or it could simply be statistical noise from a very small sample size. The study included 65 officers in the misconduct group and 81 in the comparison group, and with a sample that small, the statistical power is limited. For a general audience, limited statistical power, as they call it, means that the study might have missed real-world effects simply because the group was too small to detect them reliably. The authors themselves state that the lack of clear findings for this group may reflect the limited statistical power rather than the true absence of meaningful effects. In other words, There might be predictors for this group, like mental health, financial stress, peer dynamics, or exposure to organisational strain, which the author suggests as possibilities, but this study wasn't large enough to find them. Regardless, the correlation might well be a numerical blip, but the seeming weight of the secondary work is a strange result, a challenging one that clearly needs more research to be understood. So, what we have here are three very different groups of officers, which suggests that the way police forces think about preventing misconduct might need to be seriously considered. I know what you're thinking. Don't police forces already have systems for this? Well, they do. They're often called early warning systems, sometimes called early intervention systems. The authors describe these data-driven systems designed to flag officers who show patterns of problematic behaviour, like a spike in citizens' complaints or use of force incidents, so that supervisors can intervene before something catastrophic happens. This research is critically important because it suggests the very systems which often rely heavily on complaint data might be completely blind to a certain type of officer at risk. The spontaneous misconduct group seems to fly completely under the radar, they say, of traditional metrics representing a major gap in modern police accountability. The work doesn't stop there though. It suggests some reasons why secondary employment might matter so much. First, there's general strain theory. In a nutshell, this theory suggests that misconduct could be a response to stress and frustration. Having a second job could be a major indicator of strain, perhaps from an insufficient primary income, family obligations, or personal debt, as the authors suggest. They also note that this strain may arise not only from financial pressures, but also from the cumulative stress of balancing competing demands across two occupations. When you combine what with the already immense stress of policing, it could push an officer towards making dangerously poor decisions. Next, there's role conflict theory. This perspective focuses on how juggling two jobs can create divided loyalties. This isn't just about being busy. The authors suggest it can weaken an officer's identification with the core police values. It exposes them to outside networks, where norms and expectations might conflict with their professional code. An officer's identity and focus become split, which can weaken their professional resilience. These theories provide a powerful way to understand the data, but the researchers themselves are quick to point out that the study is an important first step, not the final word, and it has some key limitations we should consider. Interestingly, Cubitt, Brown and Bland encourage readers to think more deeply about the word spontaneous. They propose that this misconduct might not truly be spontaneous at all, but rather institutionally unobserved. This is a critical distinction. It suggests that the problem may not be with the officer's sudden turn to deviance, but with a failure of the organisation's ability to see and record the early warning signs. This could point to a system failure, a culture of underreporting where colleagues don't flag concerning behaviour, or complaint procedures that make it difficult to substantiate allegations, effectively erasing them from the official record. The misconduct isn't spontaneous, it's our ability to see it. If there's one single message to take away from this study, it's that police misconduct doesn't follow a single predictable path. What human behaviour does. The idea of a typical misconduct-prone officer is a likely myth. Instead, the research reveals that there are multiple, distinct trajectories into serious misconduct, and a one-size-fits-all approach to prevention is almost certainly destined to fail. The study points to a few key implications for policy and practice. Early warning systems, they say, need to be more nuanced. They can't simply be complaint counters. For the group of officers who accumulate many unproven complaints, The data suggests that other factors, like frequent transfers and especially secondary employment, might be much more useful flags for intervention. The spontaneous group represents a fundamental challenge to accountability. Because these officers don't generate the traditional data signals, police forces need entirely new strategies to identify them. This might involve looking at different types of data, such as measures of work-related stresses, financial strain, or other behavioural clues that aren't captured in a complaint file. Ultimately, the authors reinforce that understanding these different pathways is essential for developing a fairer, more precise, and more effective way to ensure police accountability. In the episode of 24 Hours in Police Custody I mentioned before, the blackmail plot and the serving officer, he had an unblemished record. He'd received a commendation for his work. His colleagues were stunned that he was the one that they didn't see coming. For any listeners who wish to delve into the details of this paper for themselves, which of course I'd recommend, it's titled Fire Without Smoke, Understanding Spontaneous Career-Ending Police Misconduct. It's authored by Timothy I.C. Cubitt, Morven Brown and Matthew Bland, and you can find it published in the journal Police Quarterly. A link to the paper, as ever, is in the show's notes, and of course I'd urge you to read it for yourself. New episodes will drop every week, so make sure you subscribe and please recommend A Perspective on Crime to friends, colleagues and anyone who you think might be interested. Finally, if you've read some research you think others should know about, drop me a message via the link in the show notes. If you yourself have new work coming out and like it covered, please get in touch. Until next time, goodbye.